All right, hello everyone. This is Brian Taylor of the Recycling Today Media Group. The next portion of our program is a roundtable discussion between 4 people involved in the battery recycling sector. It has as its theme, boosting circularity in the battery sector. As we get underway, I'd like the 4 panelists to be able to introduce themselves, and I'll start with Joseph, who's in Dubai. Joseph?
Yeah, good evening, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Joseph Hobby. I'm the founder of Medina and Nokba Recycling Services. We started operation in Dubai 2015. And we are practically into the e-waste recycling, and we also provide solution for fluorescent lamp recycling. And we just dive into the batteries recycling services.
Sorry, Joseph, thank you for that introduction. Let's go down to Singapore now, to Leon.
Hi, Brian, and welcome everybody. My name is Leon Farrens. I'm the co-founder and the CEO of Green Lion. We're a startup out of Singapore. We're trying to fix the existential risk to the precious metals industry and the planet by creating the first technology that can fully rejuvenate lithium-ion batteries when they're spent. So effectively, we have a world-first technology which uses a hydrometallurgical process with a smaller carbon footprint than best-in-class machines. We operate this to fully rejuvenate battery cathodes rather than just creating black mass. And we do it with zero environmental discharge, negative discharge. So we're working hard to get that out to the public and the world.
Very much for that introduction of yourself. And now let's go, I guess it would be north to Finland, north for any of us here certainly, to Carl.
Hi and good evening everybody. So my name is Carl Saarima. I'm very happy to be here. Important topic, battery recycling, and one of my favorites as well. So I'm working as a vice president in Fortum Corporation, one of the biggest energy utilities in Europe. And I'm running there all of our waste and recycling related activities, and I would say we are the leaders of that domain in the Nordic countries. We have in our portfolio, in recycling portfolio, many different materials, all the way from plastics, different metals, to then batteries. And we are really focused on lithium-ion batteries in the industrial scale, the bigger level by EV level batteries, and having kind of technology invested in the whole value chain, all the way from collection, mechanical recycling, and the hydrometal processing, and with our abilities able to reach almost 100% recycling rates in the future, and just filed a patent on the lithium extraction with the hydro technology. So there's a lot happening in this domain.
Thank you very much, Carl, for that. And our 4th panelist, if you viewers were with us about 20 minutes to a half hour ago, you've already seen this gentleman. It's Willy Tomm. Willy, could you please introduce yourself and talk a little bit about your consultancy? Who are the customers? And
good afternoon or good evening or good morning, wherever you are in the world. My name is Willy Tomm. I'm located north of Antwerp in Belgium. I'm an independent consultant working only for myself. I've been in the car industry for 44 years. I worked in the car industry for 44 years. And now I do some consultancy on batteries, but especially for industrial batteries for electromobility. So I'm looking into the European battery legislation rather closely. I follow that up. And I look also for the Batteries Europe initiative as after second life of batteries, of industrial batteries from electromobility. So that's a little bit the area of my interest, Ryan.
Terrific. Thanks very much, Willy, for the introduction. I'd like to direct, I think, this first question maybe to Leon and to Carl, because they represent efforts to process fully and extract materials from the lithium-ion battery stream. And in terms of the shifting trends towards sustainable solutions and the increase in the volume of these types of batteries in phones and laptops and in vehicles, as Willy just mentioned, What are the opportunities that exist for profitable end-of-life lithium-ion battery recycling? What will it take to be a profitable activity from your points of view? And Leon, if I could, I'll start with you.
Thanks, Brian. I think that there's lots of opportunity in this space, given that there's such a risk to the precious metals market. They are finite resources, and they're precious, and they cost a lot to the environment as well as humanity to extract them. So the opportunity is beyond recycling in my mind. It's all about the full rejuvenation of these materials and these batteries. Of course, there's a lot of second life applications, and my esteemed counterparts on the panel can probably speak more about that and focus more on the rejuvenation. But it's about, the challenge is, how do we take these spent batteries and use every part of them to rejuvenate and create a brand new battery? And so that's a huge opportunity, and one that we're tackling, and I know Kale is also tackling. So that's where I see the opportunity.
Yeah. Cal, should you go ahead and maybe add to that answer, or?
Yeah, exactly. Add on that, because I fully agree on what Leon just said on the opportunity. I see that we have a few challenges to be solved. I believe that technologically we are in that we start to know the good solutions for that. Some challenges related to that is still related to regulation and price of some certain critical metals. I see that the further we go in the future, it will become more and more commercially feasible. But today we also would need to increase the recycling rate. And today it's still too cheap compared to, it's still too cheap to dispose batteries without recycling them to the fullest, but we would already be technologically capable. And the EU level, we are working mostly right now in EU, that's why referring to that. For instance, the regulation is still lagging behind a little bit. And I would say globally, I would assume it's lagging much more behind than in EU level. So there are challenges to be solved, but I would say we are on a good track.
Great, thanks for that response. I'd like to turn to Joseph with the question from his point of view as a collector and of these materials. As lithium-ion batteries, as of late 2020, when you get a varying and different stream of lithium-ion batteries into your facilities, how do you view the market right now? Is it more challenge, less opportunity, or where are the on 2 points of the spectrum? What are you seeing with batteries right now? Your mute button is on. Sorry.
Yeah, sorry about that. Yeah, we are still at the infant stage of the battery recycling here in UAE, and just as collectors and processing and transporting through the BASA convention process. I think it all comes with its own ups and downs, but actually we are getting there, and it's giving a lot of opportunities for us to address some of the environmental concerns in UAE, like alleviating toxicity, safety, and those kind of contamination issues here. And our later side of doing business as well, we try to generate some more economic activities where we employ more guys for the sorting, storage, and also transportation handling of the battery. But again, it comes with its own challenges that we are facing, but slowly we are getting there.
Understood. Thanks. We have a question from a viewer, which seems to be directed at Leon, but I think maybe it could apply to Cal as well. And that is the scaling up of these kinds of technologies. I think it's safe to say that both green lithium ion and Fortum, they're kind of in the early stages of this technology. Leon, what can you tell us about scaling up into a larger commercial scale for what you've got going on?
Yeah, I mean, that's a really hot topic within our office currently. Our machine, we produce 1 ton of battery cathodes every 10 hours. Our machine can. So the the person with the comment is correct. It's hard to scale. We need a lot of machines. We need numerous machines. But what we see is that battery recyclers and people that have the supply chain connections to sell the cathode materials or maybe produce their own batteries, they don't always want to create one battery type. They might want to create NMC 111 for months on end, and then they want to change it and they want to create 622 or a different type. And so what our machine allows you to do is reconfigure the control system and change and produce a different outcome. But also having different lines and different machines allows you that that luxury. So you can scale. Unfortunately, you need more machines to scale, and to have more machines, you need to invest in more hardware, more capital, and it costs money. But you know, it's probably a commercial challenge rather than a capability challenge. I'm not sure if Cal agrees with me or it's only part troops. Yeah.
What is the view from Finland? Fortum is a pretty large company with a lot of interest. So how does it see the scale opportunity?
I think we have now designed the facility. We are ready to take the scale of investment decision very soon, and we are planning to invest in a really industrial scale facility that could handle most of the European black mass generated in the region. And I believe the key is we all know that the batteries will not come end of life in massive amounts yet soon, but our process is very much, we don't think about it only as a battery recycling. But Leon also told it's really about critical metals, critical raw materials. So what we look into is different applications where our technology can be applied, like industrial side streams and different waste materials that are not batteries but have same components. So that helps us to scale up in the commercial way, that we are not focusing only on batteries, but similar masses that where we then extract these valuable metals. That helps us to build a commercially and industrially bigger operation.
See, thanks very much for that update. Willie, I'd like to direct my next question to you because you've got the experience with the vehicle market. But in terms of the EV batteries, the battery packs, you know, I think Leon mentioned something rather interesting, and that is that there's not yet uniformity or standardization. There are many different types of these large vehicle batteries. Every couple of years, there's a new one that becomes the favorite. How does that affect either the regulatory aspects or the market, you know, profitability aspects when it comes to these large EVs and batteries and finding a circular outcome for them?
That's a challenge, I would say, because in those electric vehicles, you have batteries with a weight from, let's say, 20 to 25 kilograms to 700-800 kilograms. So it's a diversity in weight. You have also a diversity in chemistry and a diversity also in application, which makes it probably at end of life at recyclers rather difficult to know with what type of battery they are dealing with. One of the proposals in the new battery regulation that is likely to be announced, was supposed to be announced today, but the European Commission has delayed it until tomorrow. One of the topics that they want to discuss is a so-called battery passport, which means that as of production until recycling, the battery will have some kind of like you have with a vehicle identification number, so that the battery could be followed through its lifetime, and that all people involved, all operators involved, stakeholders involved would know what type of battery they have they're dealing with. Of course, at recycling, depending on the chemistry and on the content of certain metals in those lithium-ion batteries, those batteries can have maybe a positive or a negative value at recycling, and that's the economics. And you have already mentioned that several times. The economics is a real issue with the recycling of lithium-ion batteries. On top of that, you have now also the movement in trying to, within the European Green Deal and the circular economy objectives to try to extend the life of those batteries, because they are very expensive, they're very big, so very high tech. So they want to try to extend the life of those batteries by refurbishing, by remanufacturing and putting it to a second life. As I mentioned in my talk earlier today, there's a big gray zone about producer responsibility, but whatever they do during the lifetime of the battery, at one point in time, all batteries need to be recycled. So they will end up in recycling. So I think for recyclers, it's very important to know what type of battery they get on their hands. We don't talk about AAA batteries here. We talk about very complex chemistries. I used to call them a small chemical factory, in fact. And you guys in the recycling industry, you have to know how to deal with them, how to dismantle them, and how to take them apart into the right materials. So what I notice here in Europe is that at the recycling of those type of batteries, there is at this moment there are no objectives as to percentage of recycling efficiency for certain materials. Of course, there is for you have to receive recycling efficiency in general, but there are not yet, and that will come for sure, specific targets for how much lithium has to be recycled, how much cobalt, how much manganese, etc., etc. So that is something that will come. What impact that will have on the recycling industry, because you're going to have to really go into detailed recycling. I'm not so sure about that, but it's a challenge for it. It's going to be a challenge, especially when the volume will increase, which I expect because of the takeoff of electromobility in Europe also now. That the big volumes will come in, let's say, 3 to 4 years. Huh?
Okay, terrific. I'd like to talk a little bit about the geography of lithium-ion and EV battery recycling. And I'll start with Joseph on this one, because I suspect his career, he's done some trading, transboundary, cross-border trading. And so what Joseph, what would you like to see in terms of the ability to be able to send batteries to the best outcome destination in terms of being able to make a bit of a profit? Do you want to see a solution there's one place in Dubai you can send batteries there? Would you rather be able to have a little more geographic flexibility? What's a good outcome, do you think, in that respect?
Actually, I think we have some players here they are getting ready to set something in place in some few months or few years to come. But the closer a proper recycling facility, the better for us to avoid the transboundary movement of those hazardous material. So, but as I said, there is a plan. We have a plan of engaging into a proper recycling of the batteries here in UAE, and that will actually be a good option for us, which will save us money.
Leon, in terms of scaling up the technology at companies like yours, do you see an approach that would have several different plants? You'd start in Singapore, and then maybe green lithium ion could go to a neighboring country and another neighboring country. How do you think scaling up would work best geographically for you?
Yeah, so just to be clear, super clear about our business, we are a technology company, so we build a battery rejuvenation machine, right? So we've got a chemical reactor the size of a small apartment. It's about 80 square meters, and so our machine can be deployed to anybody's factory around the world. They're anybody's plant. So from scaling up perspective, I mean, it's just how quickly we can build these machines. And of course, the scaling problem comes with the supply chain as opposed to our machinery, other than the limits on the co-precipitation process, which, as I mentioned, takes 10 hours per 1 ton. So the supply chain issue poses scale problems because it's about how much black mass can we get our hands on. We bring in black mass into our machine, and we create cathodes. We produce cathode material. That is how we create 4 times more profits for recyclers. So scaling is not to be crass, but it's not really our problem. It's a problem of our clients, I guess. And that's why we try and work with the guys that have the basal permits to move the batteries around the world, the people that have access to large volumes of spent batteries.
Got it. Cal, what can you say about Fortum's approach geographically? Is it a European overall solution? What might be the geographic spread of this technology if all goes well?
I would say we don't limit our kind of global reach. Right now, we built our first ecosystem in Europe, which would cover all parts of the Europe. It is a multi-facility approach. Typically, the kind of mechanical separation is more near to the batteries, and then the final kind of recycling to the precious metals can be more centralized. We don't rule out moving to US, for instance, in the coming years. I'd say Europe, US would be our first domain, first geographical area where we look into. Asia has also a lot of potential, but we need to, of course, be focused. But our business model is really a bit different than what Leon's company is having. Like we build and operate, so we see ourselves as the recyclers. But as we don't see the technology on the market that would satisfy our needs, so we have developed for this specific area our own technology, both for the mechanical and the hydro part of the recycling value chain. So then, of course, if there's a good thing in Leon's company, we can discuss further maybe after the panel also.
Okay, thanks very much. We have some questions from viewers, and I would like to address those now. And I guess give me a wave if you think you'd like to take on one of these questions. One of them has to do with producer responsibility, and that it's the point of view of this questioner that it really will be necessary to get a genuinely high recycling rate for lithium-ion batteries. Do we have agreement on that, or anybody want to offer their thoughts on the role of producer responsibility in lifting the lithium-ion battery recycling rate? Cal, I'll start with you. Yeah, please.
I can say a few words. I think that's essential. As really very well pointed out, it's not the business that has inherent value right now in most of the cases. So the economics are difficult. So then if the end user or producer has the opportunity to choose the lowest cost solution, it might very well be a landfill or an incineration plant for the battery. So in order to boost the development, I think especially in EU where we have a widely implemented producer's responsibility, I think that is a very good tool to speed up quite much the battery recycling. Really pointed out very well that now we have very low percentage at all, and now it's based on the weight of the battery, like 50% of the battery needs to be recycled. But then if you take the cover away, that's the 50% almost. So we need to have a very ambitious target, but producer's responsibility is a good tool to implement battery recycling, in my opinion.
Anyone else like to offer a comment on the producer responsibility? Joseph, please go right ahead.
Yeah, I think producer responsibility will actually really facilitate our job in UAE, because we actually get deep into awareness campaign of letting people know that they actually have to recycle these batteries, and the chemistry of the battery as well is another concern that we are facing. So that with the producer responsibility, that will speed up the process, our collection process in the Middle East as well.
Another question about an emerging, I think, battery technology, silver oxide batteries, and the questioners of the thought that since silver is has value, these batteries could achieve a higher recycling rate. Does anyone on the panel want to offer a thought on silver oxide batteries? Have you encountered many of those? Do you expect to see more of those coming through the system? I will acknowledge I don't know a great deal about silver oxide batteries.
So I can briefly comment. Comment on that. I think there will be battery innovations still in the future, and but for the recyclability, also cobalt and the metals right now used in batteries has value. Typically, it's not about the value of the metal, but the construction of the battery, how that is built, how standardized it is, how it's easy to disassemble, and then at the same time we see that all the new battery factories built is mostly still based on, if you can say, conventional but lithium-ion battery technology. So we will have anyway huge amount of lithium-ion batteries on the market, regardless whether there will be disruptive technologies entering. So then we just need to find solutions for the new disruptive technologies and recycling those batteries in the future as well. But right now, I believe the lithium-ion batteries is the most urgent thing to solve the recycling for those.
Thanks so much for your thoughts on that. The earlier roundtable, there was some discussion of the informal sector, which plays a pretty big role in electronic scrap. There are those folks who harvest what they can get that has value and sort of not pay so much attention to the rest. Is there an informal sector role right now in battery recycling? And if so, what would that role be? We have a question from the viewer on that, a viewer. Anybody want to tackle that one? I don't see a wave. So I don't know if informal, maybe this is kind of a crossover question. Yeah.
If nobody else would want to be all the time in the air, have airtime, but batteries, the extracting of the metal is so much more difficult. But if we take electronics, or if we take certain plastics or certain materials, it needs to pick up, or certain metals, it needs to pick up the valuable parts. These are hazardous waste materials, and for instance, the cobalt is totally mixed into the black mass of the battery. So I would say there is the route that either it's incinerated or landfill, or then properly recycled. I don't see this gray sector dominating in this area that much, but I don't know how the other panelists see the question.
Thanks. Willy has a hand raised, please.
Yeah, I'm not sure what is meant by informal. Do I understand informal to be illegal, or is that a different approach? I don't know what is meant informal from a European perspective. I bother with that word.
That there's a uniform definition for the informal sector, although it is often, I think, as I understand it, or as I see it described at trade shows and such, it would be collectors who scavenge for material and then probably harvest, precious metals or the parts for which they can kind of sell uphill at a value, and then maybe don't have and so the word illegal gets involved here. They may not be all that interested in compliance with the remaining 90 or 70% of the product. It can be discarded, landfilled. They're really in it to scavenge for the valuable parts. So I don't know with batteries exactly. I think it's more, if it's a larger electronic item, the battery may get discarded with the rest of the laptop computer or something like that.
But that is what in Europe we want to try to avoid. That is this informal network, because as they want to control the battery from production all the way down to recycling, many of the stakeholders have responsibilities. We just mentioned about producer responsibility, but if at end of life the recycler has to prove the recycling efficiency of his recycling process, he has to know what is coming at him. And if on the way to the recycler, other people are trying to take out precious metals and all the valuable things and leave to the recycler only the waste or the scrap, from an economic point of view, that's not the way to survive properly. So, I mean, Europe is trying to put rules in place to try to control this whole process and do this in an ethical and an environmental friendly way, because we have seen in the past that the so-called informal channels do not always respect the proper environmental rules and legislative requirements with regard to metals, but also to chemicals. And I mean, that's not the way to go, we think.
Yeah, I completely agree with Willy and Carl. I definitely wouldn't recommend any of these unofficial people trying to, sort of pull apart a battery or find the precious metals inside. However, what I find interesting, what I'd interested to see is what happens if there's ever an urban mining movement. Given that 95% of all of lithium-ion batteries are in landfill, end up there. When are we going to realize that there's a huge amount of potential opportunity or wealth or precious metals to be had from these discarded batteries, and how do we capitalize on that, and how do we pull them out of landfill where they're damaging the earth? And if it is unofficial channels, then as long as they don't hurt themselves by trying to pull apart the battery, then maybe it's okay.
Yeah, but Leon, that is the problem. That if I can just come back to that, that's the problem with lithium-ion batteries in consumer electronics, because they are embedded in products. It's not like a battery, an industrial battery from a vehicle, which is like a big battery, which consumers normally cannot handle. But a battery in a mobile phone, a battery in a computer, that's a different thing. And because of that, you see a hoarding effect. They did a study in Belgium that on the average, people in a Belgian household have more than 100 batteries in their household. And they keep their mobile phones, they keep their old mobile phones, and everything, and then they bring it away or they throw it away. And that's a little bit of the problem in the WE recycling, and that therefore there is the attempt to increase the collection rate, especially from those type of batteries. We're not talking about the AAA or A batteries which are being collected, or the lead acid batteries which have a value because of the lead, but the batteries in those consumer products, that's a problem. And what we see now is that some of the mobile phone operators or producers, they embed the batteries and you cannot even take them out. Batteries are like sealed into the product, and then it becomes difficult to take the battery out, and then you have to go to special recycling. I don't know, Kalle, if you guys are specialized in that, but like you have Umicore here in Belgium. It's one of the companies that handles a lot of mobile phones, and they have expertise to take out batteries from those type of products. But I think that there is a big problem, and higher collection is a solution in that, and increase the collection rate, and by obligation, I think it would be a solution. But that's a political question, I think.
A couple of comments that you've made and that Leon made sort of lead to a question we've received from a viewer, which has to do with lithium, the mining of lithium and other metals. Presumably, it's environmentally damaging. Would any of you like to comment on, is the recycling of lithium-ion batteries getting enough regulatory support to recognize the benefits it has to society in terms of preventing more mining? Will we get there at some point, I guess, that governments will support recycling because it cuts back on mining? Willy, I guess I'll start with you, because as a consultant, you probably asked that question.
Well, I think it's a matter of demand and supply here. If virgin lithium material is available at a lower price than recycled lithium material, then it's difficult. What is needed, I think, and what they will try to do with the batteries regulation in Europe, is to impose recycling rates for example, lithium materials, and for cobalt, etc. That will make, as a consequence, I think that will increase the cost of recycling. And then the question will be, who will be willing to pay for that increased cost? And then we come back to producer responsibility. Who is then responsible for that battery at the end of life? So I think this is a difficult question that certainly will pop up in the years to come. Absolutely, but it's a matter of demand and supply. I think it's an economic issue, I suppose.
Okay, so at this point, the government support to change it from being an economic issue just simply isn't there. What about a viewer has mentioned an aspect that I had also had in my list of questions earlier, which is lead acid battery, the lead acid battery example. Certainly, you know, when one looks at the recycling rate for lead acid batteries, there's a success story there. It wasn't arrived at overnight. So is there optimism in the thought that there could be a path toward a similar 98% or so recycling rate for other batteries that has been achieved by lead acid batteries, and why or why not might that pattern repeat itself? I'd be willing to listen to anybody's thoughts on that. Okay, Cal, please.
Yeah, I think I wouldn't make the comparison because those lead acid batteries are very easy to recycle, very simple process, and they have inherent value. So, and everything in the world has always been recycled that has inherent value, like the basic metals. You recycle them without any regulation because that's possible. So first of all, I wouldn't make the comparison. They are totally different products. When the materials get more scarce, the critical metals, that will improve the commercial feasibility. And then when the environmental agenda globally goes forward and the regulation is more in place, the recycling rates will increase. So I would say there is hope that kind of recycling rates could be achieved, but for totally different means and ways to do it, because they are just totally different products.
Great.
Yeah,
Terrific.
I think I can maybe expand on that a little bit. I'm completely optimistic because, you know, our technology not being the only in the world, of course, I'm sure there's others doing great things, but we produce 99.9% pure cathodes out of lithium-ion batteries without sorting. So, you know, if we're achieving that now, I'm sure when we work together, we can all do much better.
But with 2021, I guess, just around the corner, I guess I'll ask what any of our panelists would like to comment on what they think might happen regulatory legislation-wise in their part of the world. Is there anything coming down the road that might change the battery recycling options in Singapore, in Europe, in the UAE, or well, two of you are in Europe. So I'll start with you, Cal. What do you know or think will happen in 2021 that might change Fortum's operations that would come from a regulatory viewpoint?
I would say we are already prepared to that, so I wouldn't change our operations, but I would say in EU we will see soon the renewed EU battery recycling initiatives, which I hope that will show these higher recycling rates, these battery passports what Willy was mentioning already. So and then we will also have national initiatives, like Finland will have a battery strategy. So we will see that also at national level in EU. So I expect that next few years, a lot happening, positive development in EU and regulatory level that will help the commercial feasibility of this business.
Yeah, and I guess I mean we're way behind Europe over in Asia, but you know, in 2021 we'll see Singapore implement their EPR or end of life producers responsibility legislation. So that's mandating OEMs to recycle their batteries. So that's really encouraging. Australia is also strengthening and bolstering their guidelines. So and creating legislation. More legislation around that, but also the amount of funding and government support in these areas is really reassuring. Lots of support for battery and e-waste recycling.
Terrific to hear. Joseph, what about in the UAE or the greater GCC region?
I think 2021 we will witness increase in the rate of recycling in the batteries and also in the e-waste as well. And presently, the UAE government is actually really stepping on the informal sector of battery recycling, and which we respect their source of income. And we are also trying to make sure we work with them as partner, because they are one of the main collector as well, to make sure we get more collection in the region. But the government as well is working more harder to get this issue of batteries, safety issues, well, and environmental issues in UAE cleared off as soon as possible.
And thanks for that mention of the informal sector, because we've had some viewers who've kind of chimed in and said, well, the informal sector reminded us, I'll say, that the informal sector plays a valuable role in the collection aspect, and that certainly for many households around the world, that is what gets them by. That's their source of income, and one shouldn't be anxious, should be eager to legislate that away. And I thought we had a pretty good discussion on that in the previous roundtable, that there are, some of the government efforts starting to emerge are beginning to try to connect the informal sector with what's maybe called the more formal or the deeper pocketed sector. And so I am glad you mentioned that, because we're running out of time and we almost didn't get a chance to do that. Willie, that kind of brings us around to you. You probably keep as close a tab as anyone on regulatory matters, certainly in Europe, but maybe globally as well. Will 2021 lead in any particular direction, or cause either turmoil or better conditions for some of the people in this business?
Well, the batteries directive will change into a regulation, which means that it will become immediately into effect in all 27 EU member states, except for the UK, after Brexit on the 1st of January. However, what certainly will be included in the new regulation is an increase in collection rates, an increase in recycling targets, specifically also for lithium-type batteries and for portable batteries. Not so much difference, I think, for lead-acid batteries. They keep that. We see, of course, as Kalle also said on the battery passport, the whole traceability of batteries throughout the life of the batteries. That is going to be important also at the recycling end. The whole issue around second life of batteries, which was not existent 10 or 12 years ago, and extended producer responsibility, the EPR and the transfer of ownership, all those issues are going to be included in this revision of the batteries directive. So I see a lot of major changes next year, which will have serious impact on a lot of people throughout the value chain of batteries, whether it's portable, industrial, or automotive batteries. Yes, it's going to be. And I suppose this is going to have also maybe an indirect impact on the business in other parts of the world. I assume in Asia and in the Middle East that even with the transfers of material from regions to regions, and with and with the economics related to that, I think this might have an impact. I'm not so sure that we need to see, but therefore I think it would be good to have regular meetings with people from different regions together, and continue this type of activity to try to understand what the needs are in different regions. Because I mentioned about this informal network, but I think from my local point of view, but indeed, as Joseph says, for him it's important. And I understand that, and I think that is important. So I think we need to have an open mind and a helicopter view on to see what is going on in the whole world. Eh? Yeah.
I have one last topic that's been mentioned in our viewer comments, and it also was mentioned by the very first speaker, Dr. Kolba in Germany, because his company has had 3 facility fires caused by lithium-ion batteries. And I guess, Willie, maybe you're the logical one to ask this. How does that fit into the proper management of lithium-ion batteries? And is that something that could change the way these batteries are collected and processed in the near future?
Yeah, well, the safety of and the health of the people, operators handling batteries is of key importance. CTIF, which is the global emergency services, all the most in the most of the world, all the fire brigades are member of CTIF, and they ask now to car producers to provide rescue sheets and emergency response guides in order to have a clear understanding about all the safety issues. If you see what happens in transport with the ADR regulation or air regulation or ship regulation with regard to packaging and transport of lithium-ion batteries, just because of incidents as happened in the future. By the way, in Europe, every day 50 cars burn out because they are gasoline or diesel cars, and nobody talks about it. But if one Tesla hits a fire, that's all over the papers and on television. So it's not comparable for the moment. But we take the point of view that electric vehicles are as safe as any gasoline or diesel vehicle. But you have to, as I mentioned before, you have to deal with the lithium-ion batteries in a professional way.
I think the concern
proper diagnose, expertise, knowledge, education. That's a key for people handling lithium-ion batteries. And I think that is, to me, that's the biggest message with regard to safety and health of people handling those type of batteries.
Okay, terrific. And I think that ties into the questions we've gotten, because it's a concern that recycling facilities are having insurance struggles because lithium-ion batteries have caused fires at recycling plants. So I don't know if Leon or Cal or Joseph has a comment about that. Maybe that's a bigger problem in the US. I don't know, but it certainly seems to be on the minds of some of our viewers.
No, it's happening in Europe as well. We had actually this year an incident, not this kind of a car level, with big batteries. I think that's about just having the safety solution for collection and people understanding the risks. I think they can be properly managed. We've experienced this more with the smaller scale batteries, that people are not seeing the hazard of those, and then the customers who's generating waste are mixing different product wastes, and then comes to your recycling facility, you have your crushing equipment, and then you have there a battery, and then that catches a fire, and it's almost impossible to spot that material from the incoming feed. So they pose a hazard, but that is not an argument, you know, to electrify things what we are doing. We just need to put more effort to the safety processes and managing things safely. But of course, they are a hazard, and they need to be handled as such. So taking seriously these risks.
That viewpoint. Thank you, gentlemen, for your time and thoughts. We've actually run out of time for this particular roundtable. It's been a discussion that provided a lot of good takeaways. I hope for the viewers, it did for me. And for our viewers, that concludes the International WEEE and Battery Recycling Virtual Conference. I want to take this final moment to urge everyone to check back in with the website over the next several days. The site will remain active for logged in attendees. You may continue requesting and booking virtual meetings, I believe. So it's worthwhile to see if an opportunity has arisen in the next few days, or one arises in the next few days. Thanks everyone for your participation today. On behalf of Waste and Recycling Middle East and Africa and the Recycling Today Media Group, this is Brian Taylor saying goodbye, and hope everyone has a safe, healthy, and prosperous 2021. Goodbye, gentlemen. Goodbye, everyone.